You remember that feeling? School's out, you've got the remote, and you're flipping through channels praying your show hasn't already started. No DVR, no streaming. If you missed it, you missed it. And somehow, that made it hit even harder. The 2000s were this wild, unhinged era of live-action superhero television where networks were desperately trying to cash in on comic book culture before anyone really knew how to do it right. The budgets were questionable, the special effects were brave, the acting was big and loud and completely committed to the bit. And honestly, that's exactly why we love them. These weren't polished, focus-grouped, algorithm-fed content drops. These were real people in capes running around on real streets, fully believing in what they were doing. So buckle up because we're going back to the golden era of gloriously messy, impossibly earnest, absolutely unforgettable 2000 superhero television. Smallville, 2001 to 2011. Those opening guitar chords from Remy's Zero hit and your whole body remembered. Homework on the floor, snacks on the coffee table. Tuesday night belonged to Clark Kent. Smallville wasn't just a superhero show, it was a decade-long dare. 10 seasons, 10, of watching a corn-fed Kansas farm boy slowly, painfully, episode by episode inch toward becoming the most iconic superhero in history. And the genius move? You never saw him in the suit until the very last scene of the very last episode. That restraint is insane by today's standards. Today, they'd put him in the cape by episode 3 and have 3 spin-offs announced before the season finale. Tom Welling was 6 feet 3 inches of brooding flannel energy. The man turned down the role twice because he was terrified of being typecast, then went on to become the longest-running live-action Clark Kent in television history. 217 episodes, a benchmark no other actor has come close to touching. Every week, some new meteor freak with a completely unhinged power rolled into Smallville. Bug control, electric skin, mind reading, you name it. And Clark had to handle it using abilities he still wasn't supposed to have. But the real reason you stayed? Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor. Bald, brilliant, slowly broken. Watching that friendship between Clark and Lex crack season by season was genuinely Shakespearean. You could see the exact moment something died in Lex's eyes. You felt it. And when that finale finally arrived, Clark tears open his shirt in those last incredible seconds. The S-shield catches the light. Superman's theme swells. And even though the full suit was only glimpsed at a distance, CGI blur and all, it didn't matter one bit. After a decade of waiting, that moment hit like a freight train. Grown adults cried, your parents cried, you cried, don't lie. Heroes, 2006 to 2010. September 25th, 2006. 14.3 million people sat down for the Heroes premiere and genuinely did not know what hit them. Ordinary people, all over the world, waking up with powers they didn't ask for. A cheerleader who couldn't die. An office worker in Tokyo who could bend time and space. A nurse who could fly. A serial killer who could steal abilities by opening people's skulls. And threading through all of it, this phrase that took over every hallway and cafeteria in America: save the cheerleader, save the world. Remember that page-turning sound at the end of every episode? Tim Kring built this enormous interconnected puzzle where every character mattered, every storyline connected, and every episode ended with you needing, physically needing, to know what happened next. Hayden Panettiere throwing herself off that tower, smashing into the ground, and then just reassembling. That scene was on every top 10 countdown on early YouTube for years. Masaoka as Hiro Nakamura was pure joy bottled into a human being. He was every fan who ever read a comic book and thought, I just want this to be real. When he first stopped time and looked around with that huge grin, you felt it in your chest. Then things started to come apart. The show was already wrestling with serious problems. Power creep, pacing issues, storylines pulling in too many directions at once, and then the 2007 writers' strike arrived and cut season 2 from 24 episodes to 11, snapping the momentum clean in half. When Heroes came back, it came back wrong. Too many new characters. Logic that stopped making sense. the weight of its own mythology collapsing inward. The show burned so bright it turned itself to ash. But season 1, that was lightning in a bottle. Everyone watched it. Everyone had theories. For one perfect electric season, Heroes was the most exciting thing on television, and nobody who watched it has ever fully forgotten it. The Invisible Man, 2000 to 2002. Not every superhero show from this era came wrapped in capes and network gloss. Some of them came from stranger, grittier places. The Invisible Man arrived on the Sci-Fi Channel in 2000, and if you found it, you felt like you discovered something the rest of the world had somehow walked right past. The premise was pure pulp genius. Darian Fox, played with total lived-in charm by Vincent Ventresca, is a thief. Not a misunderstood thief with a heart of gold. Just a thief. A guy who made bad choices and got caught one too many times. His brother, a government scientist, offers him a deal to stay out of prison. Let us implant an experimental gland in your brain that secretes a light-bending agent, which wraps around your body and makes you invisible. Simple, right? Except that agent is also a neurotoxin. It builds up in Darian's system with every use. And without regular injections of a counteragent, it starts doing something terrible to his mind. Quicksilver madness, the show called it. His eyes turn silver. Something flips behind them. And suddenly, the man you were rooting for becomes genuinely frightening. Violent, unpredictable, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with punching bad guys. That tension, the superpower as a slow-burning biological countdown, gave the Invisible Man a quality most superhero shows never even reached for. Darian didn't want to be a hero. He wanted to be left alone. Every episode he was dragged back into missions he resented, dependent on a counteragent controlled by a shadowy government agency he didn't trust, surrounded by colleagues he'd never have chosen. The whole show had this wonderfully worn, slightly cynical texture. Shot cheap, lit hard, set in a world that felt like a real American city rather than a movie backlot fantasy. 2 seasons, 46 episodes. Cancelled when Sci-Fi Channel decided it cost too much to keep alive. Darian Fox never got his clean ending, never got free of the agency, never got the resolution he'd spent 2 years earning. The Invisible Man is the kind of show that rewards anyone who tracks it down today. It was doing something genuinely different, and the era it lived in never quite gave it the credit it deserved.
Hominus Nocturni?
Blade, the series, 2006. Blade, the series only lasted 1 season on Spike TV, and somehow that feels like a crime nobody talks about enough. Sticky Fingaz stepped into Wesley Snipes' shoes as the Daywalker, a half-human, half-vampire hunter with a leather trench coat and absolutely zero patience for anyone's nonsense. When it premiered, it became the most-watched original series debut in Spike TV history, pulling 2.5 million viewers for its first episode. That's not a show nobody cared about. That's a show people showed up for. And the show delivered. It was dark, genuinely dark. Graphic violence, morally layered villains, storylines that treated the audience like adults. Jill Wagner as Chase was a standout. Charismatic and terrifying in equal measure. A vampire who carried herself like she was already bored with everyone in the room. The mythology the show built around rival vampire houses and their political warfare felt original and textured. Worlds away from action of the week television. Characters died and stayed dead. Choices had consequences. This was a show with real ambition. So why did it get canceled after 13 episodes? A 2-hour pilot plus 11 more. Not because audiences stopped watching. The ratings were actually holding up. Spike TV pulled the plug because the show was simply too expensive to keep producing. A network that size couldn't sustain that budget indefinitely. And so one of the most genuinely promising superhero series of the decade just stopped. No conclusion, no second chance, just gone. Blade, the series is the one that superhero TV fans whisper about when they think nobody's listening. No Ordinary Family, 2010 to 2011. By 2010, something in the air was shifting. Iron Man had already happened. The Avengers was coming. The industry could feel the tectonic plates moving under its feet, and everyone was scrambling to figure out what superhero television was supposed to look like in this new world. No Ordinary Family was the last genuine swing of the old era, a big, warm, ambitious family superhero drama that arrived just before the MCU's blueprint made everything else feel redundant. The setup was irresistible. The Powell family, a distracted husband, an overworked wife, two disconnected teenagers, survives a plane crash in the Amazon and emerges with superpowers. Jim Powell, played by Michael Chiklis fresh off his iconic run as Vic Mackey in The Shield, becomes bulletproof and superhumanly strong. His wife Stephanie becomes the fastest person alive. Their daughter develops telepathy. Their son, in a genuinely clever twist, gets a supercharged intellect. The Incredibles had done this in animation 6 years earlier and knocked it out of the park. No Ordinary Family was betting it could do the same thing with real people, real family dysfunction, and a broadcast network budget. And for a while, it worked beautifully. Chiklis brought exactly the kind of grounded, blue-collar gravity the show needed. This was a dad who'd felt invisible in his own life and suddenly had something extraordinary to offer. And the way he played that mix of giddy excitement and quiet desperation was genuinely touching. The family dynamics had real friction. The arguments felt earned. The powers weren't just plot devices, they were mirrors held up to each character's deepest insecurities and desires. ABC canceled it after 1 season. The timing was brutal and the reasons were complicated. Ratings that started strong and slowly softened, a mythology that was still finding its footing. But in hindsight, No Ordinary Family also arrived at exactly the wrong moment. The industry was about to decide that superhero stories belonged to cinematic universes, not family dramas on Tuesday nights. It was the last of its kind, and it didn't know it yet. Watch it now and you can feel the end of something in every single frame. So, which one do you still think about? Here's the thing about 2000s live-action superhero television. Yes, the effects were sometimes embarrassing. Yes, the dialogue could tip into melodrama so thick you could cut it with a batarang. Yes, half these shows got canceled before they could stick the landing, leaving story threads dangling in the air forever. But they had something that's genuinely hard to manufacture now. Heart. Pure, unguarded, completely committed heart. The people making these shows, and especially the people watching them, believed in them completely. There was no ironic distance, no knowing wink at the camera, just real people in costumes trying to do something extraordinary on a network budget. And a generation of fans who showed up every single week because they needed to see what happened next. So, which theme song is still living rent-free in your head? Which cancellation still makes you angry when you think about it? Which character did you absolutely want to be? Drop it in the comments. I guarantee somebody else has been carrying that exact same memory. And if this hits you right in the nostalgia, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, because we're just getting started. Until next time, stay nostalgic, stay curious, and remember, the best superhero stories were never really about the powers. They were about the people underneath them.